In a small neighborhood wrapped in dusty lanes and half-forgotten dreams, lived a girl named Rhea. She wasn't extraordinary in the way people usually describe heroes. She didn't speak loudly, she didn't shine in crowds, and she never showed her pain. Instead, she carried it all quietly inside her. Like a drawer everyone forgets to open. Every morning, Rhea walked to work the same way. Slow steps, lowered eyes, headphones in her ears. Not because she loved music but because she wanted to block out the world. Life had changed her faster than she could understand. People around her moved like rushing water, and she felt like a stone sinking deeper each day. And that's where I come in. Because sometimes life doesn't send a storm first. Sometimes it sends a whisper. "Child," I say softly. Pain that hides inside the heart grows roots. Rhea didn't know it yet, but her life was preparing to change. Not with miracles, not with magic, but with truth. A truth she had avoided for too long. On that particular Monday morning, she woke up earlier than usual. The sunlight was barely alive. The world was still half asleep. She sat at the edge of her bed, staring at the floor the same way she stared at her past, with quiet heaviness. Her room was small, almost shabby, but filled with tiny pieces of her childhood. Cracked photo frame, a dried rose, a diary she once wrote in. Dusty memories, sitting silently, waiting for her to return. She touched the photo frame. Her fingers trembled. Faces she loved. Faces she missed. Faces she lost. "Everyone leaves," she whispered to herself. "But child, let me tell you something. Nobody truly leaves. Their moments stay. Their lessons stay. Their love stays. Even when they don't." As Rhea walked to the bus stop that day, her world looked the same. The vegetable seller shouting prices, the kids kicking a half-flat football, the old man reading yesterday's news. But something inside her felt different. A quiet discomfort she didn't understand. Because life changes in small cracks, not big explosions. At the bus stop, she stood alone, hugging her bag tightly, unaware that someone was watching her. Someone who would soon open a door she had kept locked for years. But that part comes later. For now, all you need to know is this. Rhea was tired. Not physically but emotionally. Tired of pretending. Tired of holding herself together. Tired of being strong alone. And when a heart becomes this tired, child, it finally starts searching for light. But here's the secret. Light had already started searching for her. She just didn't see it yet. And that is where her real story starts. Because every silent soul, every broken heart, every lost dream deserves its turn to rise. And Rhea's turn was coming. Very soon. Child, let me tell you, people don't break in a single moment. They break slowly, like a thread worn thin over time. Rhea's hidden wound wasn't something visible on her skin. It lived deeper. Tucked behind her smile, stitched beneath her silence. And most people around her never noticed. They were too busy, too loud, too occupied with their own storms. But wounds, they don't heal just because others can't see them. As she sat on the bus that morning, staring out the window, her reflection in the glass looked unfamiliar. There was a heaviness in her eyes, the kind that comes from long battles fought alone. The bus jolted forward, and with it, a memory slipped into her mind. Her mother's voice. Warm. A lullaby of comfort Rhea once lived inside. She used to say, Rhea murmured to herself, that the world will always test the strength of your heart. But Rhea's heart had been tested too many times. And somewhere in those tests, she lost herself. The memory continued. Hospital room. Cold walls. A beeping monitor. Her mother's hand slipping away slowly, like sand falling between fingers. Rhea, only 19, sitting helpless beside her. I remember that day, child. Even though I wasn't there, I can still feel the weight of it. Because grief, especially the grief of losing a mother, leaves a mark deeper than any scar. That was the beginning of the wound. But life wasn't done. After her mother passed, Rhea's father changed. Not into someone cruel but someone empty. He drowned himself in work, in alcohol, in anything that helped him forget. He forgot birthdays. He forgot dinners. Sometimes he forgot her. But the worst part, Rhea never blamed him. She blamed herself. And that, child, is the most dangerous kind of wound, the wound we keep feeding with our own guilt. She believed she should have been stronger. She believed she should have saved her mother. She believed she wasn't enough. So she built walls. Quiet walls. Thick walls. Walls that kept the world out. But also kept her pain in. As the bus rolled through the streets, Rhea blinked away tears and forced herself to breathe slowly. She hated crying. Tears made her feel weak. And weakness made her feel ashamed. But listen carefully, my child. Tears are not signs of weakness. They are signs of survival. They mean you held everything in for too long. Rhea didn't know this yet. But life was preparing her to face this wound. To stop running. To stop hiding. To stop blaming herself for battles she never chose. Just as the bus approached her stop, she noticed something strange. A young boy sitting 2 seats ahead kept turning back to look at her. Not in a rude way, but with a kind of innocent curiosity. He wasn't important yet, but he soon would be. Because sometimes healing begins with the smallest, most unexpected souls. And Rhea's wound was about to find its first light. Life has a strange way of changing direction, child. It never knocks politely. It slips in quietly. And suddenly, everything you thought was stable begins to shift. That afternoon, when Rhea stepped out of work, the sky was turning gray. Clouds gathered like heavy thoughts. The wind carried the smell of rain. Sharp, cold, familiar. She wrapped her arms around herself as she walked down the road, lost in her own mind. Her day had been the same as always. Quiet, lonely, predictable. She typed reports, served customers, avoided conversations. It was easier to stay invisible. But fate doesn't let someone stay invisible forever. As she passed the old bookstore near the signal, something unusual caught her attention. A soft rattling sound. At first she ignored it, assuming it was just the storm approaching. But then she heard it again. Small cough. Then a muffled sob. A pause. Inside the narrow space between the bookstore wall and the closed tea stall, she saw something move. Or rather, someone. The same little boy from the bus. He was sitting on the cold ground, hugging his knees tightly. His clothes were damp, his hair messy. His eyes red from crying. He looked too young to be alone, too fragile to be outside in the coming storm. Rhea hesitated. Talking to strangers wasn't something she liked. She barely managed conversations with people she knew. But something in the boy's eyes pulled her in. "Hey, are you okay?" she asked softly. The boy didn't answer at first. He sniffed, wiped his nose with the back of his hand, and looked up. "Auntie, I lost my sister. I can't find her." "Child, listen to me. Sometimes the universe doesn't send you a new beginning wrapped in gold. Sometimes it sends you a child's trembling voice. It sends you a moment that demands your heart, not your strength." Rhea felt something crack inside her. A familiar pain, the fear of losing someone. She knelt beside him. "What's your name?" she asked. "Arun," he whispered. "And your sister?" "Mira. She told me to wait near the bus stop, but I followed a stray puppy and now I don't know where she went." His voice broke and tears burst out again. Rhea's breath caught. Not because of the boy, but because she saw herself in him. Less afraid. And blaming himself. That same guilt she carried for years, reflected in a child's trembling hands. "Okay," she said gently, placing a hand on his shoulder. "We'll find her. I'll help you." He looked up surprised. "Really? You will?" Rhea nodded. And this child was the moment everything changed. Not because she rescued a boy, but because she allowed herself to care again. Care is a fragile door, child. Once you open it even a little, light begins to slip in. The rain began to fall, slowly at first. But Rhea didn't turn back. She stood up, took Arun's hand and stepped into the storm. Not knowing that this simple act would rewrite her entire life. Child, every choice we make in the present is tied to a memory from the past. Even when we think we've forgotten, the heart remembers. As Rhea walked through the rain holding little Arun's hand, her footsteps slowed. The cold drops soaked through her clothes, but she didn't care. Something about this situation was pulling her backward in time, to a memory she had locked away for years. Arun squeezed her hand tightly. Auntie, will my sister be angry at me? Rhea didn't answer immediately. Instead, she looked at him the way someone looks at an old wound, with fear, tenderness, and recognition. No, child, she finally said softly. When people love you, they worry more than they get angry. But as those words left her mouth, her heart twisted. Because the last time she said something similar, she wasn't talking to a child. She was talking to her mother. The memory came rushing back like a sudden wave. Rhea was 17. A heavy rainstorm had flooded the streets. Her mother had asked her not to go out with friends that evening. But Rhea, young and restless, had argued. She left anyway. Hours later, when she returned, drenched and breathless, she found her mother sitting by the window, sick and shivering. The cold had worsened her already fragile health. Rhea blamed herself for that night. Even though the doctors later said her mother's condition had been declining for months, Rhea carried the guilt like a stone in her chest. Every time she saw someone vulnerable, every time she saw someone lost, that night whispered inside her. And today, in the rain, with a frightened child trembling beside her, the whisper grew louder. She crouched down to Arun's level. Listen, she said gently, brushing wet hair from his forehead. It's not your fault. Sometimes we make small mistakes, but that doesn't mean we're bad. Arun looked at her with wide, confused eyes. But I should have listened to Mira. Rhea felt her throat tighten. Child, I say softly. We've all ignored warnings. We've all made choices we regret. What matters is what you do now. As they continued searching, the rain fell harder, turning the streets blurry. Shopkeepers rushed to pull down shutters. People hurried past with umbrellas. But Rhea kept walking, calling out Myra's name with Arun's shaky voice echoing behind her. Her shoes splashed through puddles. Her breath trembled. And in that storm, she understood something. All her life, she had run from moments that reminded her of her mother's illness. She avoided young people in trouble, avoided helping strangers, avoided caring too deeply, because caring meant risking pain again. But today, with a child clinging to her hand, she realized that running from pain only makes it grow. Sometimes, child, the only way to heal is to walk straight into the storm that once broke you. As they reached the old park near the main road, Rhea spotted something. A small figure sitting under a broken shelter, shivering. Arun gasped. Mira! He started running. And in that moment, Rhea felt something shift inside her. As if the past that chained her was finally beginning to loosen. Child. There comes a moment in every life when the world becomes quiet, and you are forced to face the truth you've been running from. For Rhea, that moment came the night she returned home after finding Mira. The siblings had hugged tightly under the broken shelter. Mira had cried, Arun had apologized 100 times, and Rhea had watched them with a strange ache in her chest. The ache of remembering what it felt like to be held, to be missed, to be someone's responsibility. After she dropped them safely near their guardian's apartment, she walked back alone through the soft drizzle. Her clothes were heavy, but her heart felt heavier. The streets were quieter now. Lights flickered on puddles. The storm had passed, but something inside her had begun to stir. When she reached her apartment, she switched on the dim light and shut the door behind her. Her room felt smaller tonight, as if the walls were waiting for her to finally acknowledge something she had ignored for too long. She walked to the mirror. Her reflection stared back. Wet hair clinging to her cheeks. Tired eyes swollen from old tears. Clothes still dripping from the rain. But that wasn't what held her attention. It was the expression, a mixture of fear and awakening. You see, child, mirrors don't just show faces. They show feelings. Rhea touched the glass lightly, her fingers trembling. "Why did helping a stranger feel so heavy?" she whispered. "Why did it hurt and heal at the same time?" Her voice cracked. The truth pressed against her chest like a weight she had carried for years. "I'm still scared of losing people." There it was. The confession her heart had been hiding. When her mother died, she didn't just lose a parent. She lost her safe place, her anchor, her reason to believe she deserved care. After her father drifted away emotionally, she promised herself something dangerous. Don't get attached. Don't care too much. Don't let anyone in. It was easier that way. If she didn't love deeply, she couldn't lose deeply. But today, a little boy broke that rule simply by holding her hand. And child, listen carefully. Sometimes the smallest hands can unlock the biggest doors. Rhea's reflection blurred as tears filled her eyes. She covered her face and sank onto the floor, leaning against the bed. The room was silent, except for the soft sound of her breathing. Low and steady. Real. "This is the first time," she murmured. "I didn't run from someone who needed me." Her heart tightened, but not with pain. With realization. Helping Arun had hurt. Because it reminded her of the love she lost. But it also reminded her of the love she still had inside her. Love she had buried under fear and guilt. She wiped her tears and looked up again. In the mirror, she saw not a broken woman, but a woman ready to face the things she once feared. Sometimes, child, you meet someone who isn't meant to stay forever, but they arrive to awaken the parts of you that fell asleep. And tonight Rhea's heart finally opened its eyes. Child, life has a way of sending helpers when you least expect them. Sometimes they come in grand forms, with bright clothes and loud voices. Sometimes they arrive quietly, like a shadow, like a whisper. The next morning, Rhea was still thinking about Arun and Mira. She sat at her small kitchen table, sipping lukewarm tea, watching the steam curl like tiny memories in the air. Her room, once heavy with silence, felt different, lighter. Not because the storm had passed, but because a small part of her heart had stirred. Just as she was lost in thought, there was a soft knock on the door. "Who could that be?" she whispered to herself, hesitating. She opened the door to find an elderly woman standing there, gray hair tucked under a faded scarf, eyes bright and curious, and a gentle smile that seemed to carry years of understanding. "Good morning, child," the woman said, her voice soft but firm. "I saw you helping that boy yesterday. He told me everything. I thought you might need a friend." Rhea blinked, surprised. She hadn't expected anyone to notice. She wasn't used to praise. She was used to walking alone. "Friend?" she asked, unsure. "Yes," the woman replied, stepping inside. "Sometimes the world asks us to carry someone else's burden. And sometimes it brings someone to help us carry our own. Child, listen carefully. Helpers arrive not just to save us, but to remind us we are not alone." The woman introduced herself as Mrs. Lena, a retired teacher who lived a few streets away. Her eyes twinkled as she spoke, but there was a seriousness too, a quiet strength that made Rhea feel safe. Over cups of tea, Mrs. Lena asked gentle questions. About Rhea's life, her childhood, the little battles she had faced quietly. And Rhea found herself speaking. Not just words, but pieces of her heart she had hidden for years. Pieces she didn't even realize she carried. "I know what it feels like to lose someone," Mrs. Lena said softly. "To feel invisible when the world moves around you. Carry pain alone. But child, pain becomes lighter when shared. Not with everyone, only with those who truly see you." Rhea nodded, tears welling up again, but this time, not from sadness. From relief. From recognition. From hope. Mrs. Lena stayed with her that morning, offering not advice but stories. Stories of ordinary people who faced extraordinary pain. Stories of small acts of courage. Stories of hearts that had broken and healed, quietly, without applause. By the time Rhea saw her off, she realized something powerful. The world wasn't just a place of loss and sorrow. It was also a place of connection, of unexpected allies, of small lights waiting to guide her through darkness. And child, remember this. The helpers you meet are often the ones who remind you how to help yourself. As Rhea closed the door behind Mrs. Lena, she felt a warmth in her chest. Little spark. The kind that tells you you're not alone. And maybe, just maybe, life is ready to let you rise. Child. There are nights that test you unlike any other. Nights when your heart feels heavier than the storm outside. Nights when the world seems determined to whisper, "You cannot rise." For Rhea, that night came quietly without warning. She had returned home after another long day, thinking about Arun, Mira, and Mrs. Lena. Her heart felt a strange mixture of hope and fear. Hope because she had helped someone, and fear because she realized just how fragile life could be. She sat on her bed, staring at the ceiling. The room was dark, the only light coming from the street lamp outside. Her mind, however, was alive with shadows. "What if I fail again?" she whispered. "What if someone I love leaves, and I can't save them?" Child, hear me well. This is the moment life often gives us. Not the moment of victory, but the moment that decides if you will try again. Tears streamed silently down her face. She thought of her mother, of her father, of every time she had felt abandoned. She thought of Arun and Mira, and how much she wanted to protect them. And she thought of herself, the little girl who had always carried the world alone. 4 hours she didn't move. Her chest felt heavy like a boulder pressing down. Her hands shook. Her heart screamed, but no one was there to hear. And then she remembered something Mrs. Lena had said. Pain becomes lighter when shared, but courage begins when you face it alone. Child, let me tell you, courage is not the absence of fear. It is moving forward despite fear, moving forward despite doubt, moving forward when your heart wants to hide. Rhea wiped her tears. She thought of Arun's trembling hands. She thought of Myra's worried eyes. She thought of the storm they had all survived together. And slowly, a shift happened. She sat up straighter. Her heart still pounded, but a new thought entered her mind. Can rise. Not because I am fearless, but because I am willing. She stood by the window, looking out at the quiet streets. Rain had stopped. Puddles reflected the faint light of the moon. Somewhere in the distance, a dog barked, a car honked, life moved on. And she would move on too. Child, remember this. The hardest nights are not meant to break you. They are meant to remind you how strong your heart truly is. Rhea went to bed that night feeling exhausted, yet lighter. The weight on her chest had not vanished completely. It never would. But for the first time in years, she believed she could carry it. She believed she could walk into storms. She believed she could rise. Even when the world told her she couldn't. And that night, as sleep finally claimed her, a whisper echoed in her mind. This is only the beginning, child. The dawn is coming. Child. There comes a moment when the heart decides it will not stay buried in darkness. A moment when even the smallest light begins to glow. And that light is all you need to start walking again. For Rhea, that moment came quietly the morning after the hardest night of her life. The sun peeked through gray clouds, soft and hesitant. The streets were wet from yesterday's rain, but glimmered as if reflecting her own heart, heavy yet slowly awakening. She stepped outside with a deep breath. Every step felt different today, as if the ground beneath her whispered encouragement. Move forward, it seemed to say. Even if it's one small step, it counts. Child, listen carefully. Healing never comes in a rush. It begins in the small choices, the tiny acts, the moments you think don't matter. Rhea walked toward the little park where Arun and Mira had played. She wanted to check on them, make sure they were safe. But more than that, she wanted to remind herself that caring was not a weakness. When she arrived, Arun ran toward her, grinning. Mira followed, holding a small flower in her hand. "Look, Aunty Rhea," Mira exclaimed. "We picked this for you." Rhea smiled, her chest tightening in a way that was no longer heavy with fear. It was a gentle ache of something she hadn't felt in years. Connection, trust, purpose. As they played, Rhea noticed something she hadn't seen before: a stray puppy shivering near the bushes. Her first instinct was to look away, as she might have done in the past. But now, something had changed. She knelt down, extending her hand. The puppy hesitated, then slowly moved closer. And when it finally nuzzled her hand, Rhea felt a warmth bloom in her heart. Child, that warmth is important. It is the spark of light that reminds us: caring always matters. Even the smallest kindness, given freely, begins to heal the wounds we carry. Later that day, Rhea returned home and sat at her window, looking out at the world. The streets were alive with people, noise, and life, just as they had always been. But today she saw them differently. Every passerby was a story. Every sound was a reminder that life continues, that we must continue too. She realized something powerful. The turning point is not always dramatic. It is quiet, subtle. It begins with small decisions: to help, to care, to forgive, to rise. It begins with allowing your heart to open, even a little. And child, when your heart opens, the world responds. It sends helpers, it sends challenges, it sends small miracles to guide your steps. Rhea smiled softly. Her heart was no longer heavy with fear. It was cautious, yes, but hopeful. And hope, child, is the first light of every dawn. As the sun fully broke through the clouds, Rhea whispered to herself, "I may not know everything ahead, but I will move forward, one small step at a time." And in that step, she found her turning light. Child, when the heart finally decides to rise, it does not always shout its victory. Sometimes it whispers, quietly, steadily, changing everything without notice. For Rhea, that whisper became her new path. The morning was calm, golden sunlight spilling over the streets, warming the wet pavements. She stepped outside with a purpose she hadn't felt in years. Not a purpose born from obligation or fear, but from understanding, a quiet understanding that life was fragile, and moments of goodness were gifts to embrace. She walked to Arun and Myra's home again, carrying a small bag of snacks and a little notebook. "I thought you might like this," she said, handing Myra the notebook. "Now you can write or draw your stories." The children's eyes lit up, and Rhea felt a joy she hadn't allowed herself to feel in a long time. Pure, simple, alive. Child, this is the secret. When you give, when you care, when you step forward, your own path becomes clearer. It isn't sudden. It isn't magical. It is steady. And it is yours. That day, Rhea returned home and made a small decision. She would no longer isolate herself. She would no longer carry pain alone. She would reach out when someone needed help. She would allow herself to be seen. She began small. She helped a neighbor carry groceries. She spoke to her coworker she had ignored before. She called a friend she hadn't spoken to in months. And child, do you know what happened? Every small act, every gesture of courage, every decision to care. It strengthened her heart. It healed cracks she hadn't even noticed. Rhea realized something profound. Life's wounds do not disappear completely. They remain like old rivers flowing under the ground. But when you step onto the new path, the rivers begin to flow more gently. The weight becomes bearable. The fear diminishes. In the evenings, she would sit by her window, watching the world move on. And she felt a deep peace she had never felt before. A peace born not from avoidance of pain, but from acceptance of it. Child, this is a lesson to remember. The new path does not erase the past, does not promise perfection. It simply offers a chance to walk forward with courage, even when the heart trembles. By the time the sun set that day, Rhea knew one undeniable truth. She had found her strength. She had discovered that rising is not about forgetting the darkness. It is about choosing to move through it. And as she closed her eyes that night, a quiet smile formed on her lips. A smile that whispered, "I am no longer the girl who ran from storms. I am the woman who walks toward them, one step at a time." Child, remember this. Every heart can find its new path. Even the heaviest, most wounded heart can rise. All it takes is one small choice. Child, every story has an ending, but not every ending is a conclusion. Some endings are beginnings. Beginnings that open the heart to hope, courage, and change. Rhea sat on her balcony that evening, the sky painted in shades of gold and crimson. The world felt alive. Soft wind brushing her hair, the distant laughter of children echoing from the streets. And in her chest, a calm she hadn't known in years. She thought of Arun and Mira, of Mrs. Lena and her quiet wisdom, and of all the moments she had once feared to face. Child, listen carefully. Life's storms are not meant to break you. They are meant to teach you. They are meant to remind you that your heart is stronger than you think, and that even the smallest light can guide you through the darkest night. Rhea smiled. For the first time she saw herself clearly. Not as a girl weighed down by loss, guilt, and fear, but as a woman who had risen despite it all. She understood the secret her mother had tried to teach her long ago. It is okay to fall, child, but it is not okay to stay down. Every time you rise, you learn to shine brighter. Tears welled in her eyes, not of sorrow but of gratitude. She was grateful for pain, for it had shown her strength. She was grateful for fear, for it had taught her courage. And she was grateful for love, both given and received, for it had opened her heart again. Child, the final lesson is this. Life is full of storms. Life is full of broken hearts. But within every storm, every wound, every moment of despair, lies a chance to rise. Rhea closed her eyes, feeling the soft breeze on her face. And she whispered to herself and to the world, I am ready to live, to love, and to shine. That night the stars appeared one by one, each a tiny spark of hope. And Rhea realized she was no longer afraid to reach for them. Child, remember, the world will not always be kind, but your heart can be. Even when it hurts. Even when the darkness lingers. For you are stronger than you know, and every story, including yours, deserves a chance to shine.